Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome in and welcome to the Let's Go with Julio show, where we are having courageous conversations with everyday leaders. But today, the conversation is with me and you, just a solo episode. And look, I know we haven't done this in a while. We haven't done it in a while, but you know what? We're doing it now because today is March 16th, the 1 year anniversary of Braving Big Tech. 1 year ago today, I published a 5-part audio docu-series that takes you through the journey of me getting hired and fired by some of the biggest names in tech: Apple, Google, Tumblr, Airbnb, Lyft. It took 14 months, nearly 100 pages of exhaustive writing, and it included 15 interviews, including people who were there: my mom, my partner, managers who hired me, a manager who fired me, coworkers. This project was no doubt the most vulnerable, intimate thing I've ever done, wrapping words around my experience and what happened to me. And it wasn't a tell-all. It wasn't done with the intention to try and stoke fear and anger. Actually, quite the opposite. It was intended to try and take responsibility for what happened and to use my story as a learning tool, to make the mess the message. That's really the purpose of Braving Big Tech. And it's been 1 year since it launched. And I have to tell you, it was the scariest thing that I had ever done in my life. I was so afraid to do it. But something deep inside me knew that I needed to put language to what happened. As someone who considered myself a leadership expert, I was reading the books, I was going to the events, I was taking the certifications. I never saw anybody reflect back this kind of truth, the truth about getting fired and struggling and numbing and so forth. People weren't telling the full truth, I felt. So I thought, you know what? I think that this is really interesting. And since that time, there are a lot of you who have joined the community for the first time. You're new here. And so I thought I would take a second to explain what Braving Big Tech is and to go through some of the most common questions that I have gotten over the past 12 months on my journey, speaking, giving workshops, coaching, because I think the questions are quite powerful and relevant, and they're a nice way to introduce you to the work if you haven't yet had an opportunity to listen to Braving Big Tech. So that's where we're going today for this episode. It's just me and you, and it's all about Braving Big Tech. Are you ready? Let's go. So how was this thing actually made? First of all, my best friend from college, Ricky Gunton, came back into my life, and was like, we started talking. We decided to do a pilot of 20 episodes of the Let's Go with Julio show. After those 20 episodes, I went to Ricky and was like, what would be interesting for you to do now? What do you think would be exciting? You have an interesting lens on this. And she said it would be cool to go back and talk to the people who were there. Let's talk to managers that hired you. Let's message the ones that fired you and see if they'll come on. Let's talk to coworkers. Let's talk to your husband. Let's talk to your mom about hardship. So I was like, okay, that's really interesting. So I reached out to 26 people, 18 people got back to me, 15 said yes, and we recorded 15 one-hour interviews. And in parallel, Ricky gave me a homework assignment to just write as much as I could from the beginning to the end about the whole thing. You know, we must have gotten close to 100 pages. Ricky did the brilliant job of editing all of that and then taking the 15 interviews and weaving them in to the whole script beautifully. And over a course of 14 months, we went back and forth on putting this whole thing together. And it was funny because then I thought once the script was there, I would be a one-take wonder and I would just get on the mic once. And I went into the studio, AKA my walk-in closet, and recorded. And I learned listening back that I had work to do, that I had to further process stuff, that I was rushing through certain sections. And so this process took many months of writing, interviewing, refining, and then actually articulating it onto the mic and then editing it and piecing it all together. So it's a freaking documentary, but it's in audio form. And I love that because, you know, a lot of people don't read these days. We know this from the data, but they'll listen and it feels gripping. It feels like, you know, the arc is also very interesting. You know, the first episode, the second episode, the third and the fourth are the most intense. And then the fifth is sort of the revival. It really has this beautiful emotional arc. If you stay through it to all 5 episodes, you've really been on a journey. We started piecing this together. It became clear it was going to be 5 episodes, one for each company. And in my morning pages one day, it just came to me, Braving Big Tech, the clearest articulation of what all of this was. I was braving big tech, trying to figure out how to do it, and then tell the story in such a way that it might help you, because you're braving big tech. And frankly, everybody is braving big tech right now. Whether you work in tech or not, over the next 10 years, we're all going to try and figure out how are we braving this new world that big tech is creating. So it's quite relevant for all of us. Okay, first question. 4 firings is a lot of firings. At what point did you finally admit to yourself that you were the problem, that you're the common denominator? The truth is, it took 4 firings before I was able to finally admit that I was the problem. I spent a lot of time telling stories. Everybody else was the problem. My manager was the problem. The team was the problem. The org structure, the company. It was everybody else's fault but me. At no point was I willing to slow down and take responsibility for me being the common denominator here, for how I was showing up, for how I was behaving. I didn't even have the courage to look at that because I had never thought to look at that. Why would it be me? It's not me. I'm right. You're wrong. And life had to punch me in the face 4 times in a row through these firings in order for me to finally admit and say, okay, what is the part that I'm willing to take responsibility for? Because, the stories, they weren't necessarily wrong. It was the case that sometimes I had a bad manager and sometimes the org structure was bad and so on and so forth. But I was using that as an excuse to not have to look at the truth, to not have to look at the part that I was responsible for. And that was a real aha moment for me when I called a mentor after the 4th and final time. And he said, you are well-intentioned, but poorly misunderstood and poorly implemented. You got to go figure out what you are doing, how you are showing up. What are the patterns of behavior in your life that are no longer serving you, that are recurring? I got the job at Apple. I got fired. All right, fuck you. I'm going to get a job at Google. Got the job at Google. It was great until the same patterns started to repeat. Got fired. Okay, screw you. I'll get the job at Tumblr. Great until the same patterns. Fired. Airbnb. Got the job. Same patterns. Fired. I kept telling myself this lie that everybody else was at fault but me, that I don't need to look at myself. It's not me. I'm fine. Just keep going. And what I realize now is I did not leave any space for reflection, for pausing, for slowing down. I did not leave space for self-inspection. I was ready to inspect everybody else. I had an opinion on everybody else and everybody else's work, except for my own. And at some point, I had to take responsibility for my part. And once I did that, everything started to unlock. That was the breakthrough, is slowing down so I can figure out, okay, I am the common denominator here. Okay, I have to figure this out. And I specifically remember something a mentor had said around not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. Not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you that is causing you to show up the way you are showing up right now. And that was a breakthrough. That was an aha moment when I was able to reframe the thinking of what's wrong. You are such a bad person. Shame on you. What's wrong? To hang on a second. What's happening here? Why am I doing this? Why am I behaving this way? Why am I triggered and dysregulated and acting out in a way that's no longer serving me? Why are you going after somebody in a Slack? Why are you replying all and writing a vindictive email? Why are you making someone on the team look like a fool in front of everybody? To prove a point? To play dirty? To throw the I got yous at them? Yeah, that was not working. I had to really inspect that. So I had to finally admit to myself after the 4th time that I was the problem. Next question. Did you deserve to get fired? I get that question a lot. And the truth of it is, yes and no. Yes, I did deserve to get fired because I was dysregulated, especially when I was angry. I would listen and then I would not listen. I would say I would do something and then I would not do it. I would talk about people instead of talking to them. I would profess a value, but then I wouldn't practice it. I would let my anger and frustration be in the driver's seat and take control of a project. Productivity would go down, stress would go up. People adjacent to me didn't know what to say, and I didn't know how to handle and navigate and be with the anger and channel the anger in a way that moved us forward in a progressive way. It became a fight. And frankly, it reminded me a lot of my childhood. That was the way we communicated. That was the way we would do things as a family. We fought back and forth. We would raise our voices. We would throw things at each other. We would smack things and hit things. That was what we were taught. And that does not work in corporate spaces. So yes, I did deserve to get fired. I also didn't deserve to get fired. I didn't deserve to get fired because someone should have been honest and forthcoming with me. I love Kim Scott, the author of Radical Candor, a former Googler. She talks about ruinous empathy, which is you're trying to be nice to this person because you don't want to hurt their feelings, but you're not being honest and truthful about what's going on. And if you're not being honest and truthful because you're worried about how they're going to feel, how is that serving the situation? It's ruinous. It's not actually helping. To be able to have the courage as a leader to sit down with someone on your team that is behaving in a way that is incongruent with the values of what you know them to aspire to or to be or to have, right? And to say, listen, I want to give you some feedback. I want to give you some tough love because I see and believe in your capacity to get here, but I see you showing up in a way that does not match that. And I want to talk about that. Nobody ever sat me in a room to have these hard conversations. No, people would have rather just let me go instead of having some hard conversations. No one thought to invest in a coach. Where was the coach? Where was the HR person that would say, hey, we believe in you and we want to develop you and we can tell that there are some things that need to be worked on. So we're going to commit to a learning plan. No one ever did that. What has been so healing about Braving Big Tech is getting to go back and speak to the people who were there. It has become really a reclamation for me, hearing their side of the story. You know, for example, Alan Mask had some beautiful commentary about how organizations should also take responsibility for this situation. And maybe it was the organizations that failed me. Listen to what he said here.
You know, maybe Julio is rubbing shoulders with this person the wrong way, or maybe he's at odds with this person here. And it's like, okay, well, how do we set him up for success? And how is it my job to help make sure that he's in the right lane, to make sure that he's working against the right brief? And we as leaders, responsible and accountable for the work, have to figure out how we create the right conditions. Those organizations failed you, and you getting fired 4 times, not you failing those organizations.
And even still, while that may be true, and it is true, I do think that that's very important right now, which is why I do the work that I do. At the very same time, nothing really does begin to change until you take responsibility for your part. However small, however big it is, you have to be willing to take responsibility for your part. And that is the whole intention behind this project, Braving Big Tech. It is an invitation to take responsibility for your life and be radically honest about the truth. And until you do that, what's it costing you? Because you will stay stuck until you are radically honest with yourself about what the hell is really going on in your life. I'm telling you. The other thing is I realized I did have managers that were intimidated by me. I did have cultures that were toxic. I did have systems that were oppressive and not working for everybody and not serving the customer or the employees. And I did try and push on those and improving those. It wasn't the what, it was the how. And I didn't always get that right. And so did I deserve to get fired? Yes and no. There were parts of me that showed up in such a way that, yeah, maybe I did deserve to get fired. There were also parts of me that were areas for development and I didn't deserve to get fired. And perhaps the organization could have stepped up and helped me. Both can be true. And that's the important piece here. Both can be true. Another question I get is a lot of people ask me about the numbing. I still struggle with it. I think we all do struggle with numbing to various degrees. I wouldn't have classified it as numbing at the time. I would have classified it as hyper-optimization. Feeling like every day of the week I needed to hyper-optimize. I was always double booked, always doing things. I used to spend nights and weekends at work partying, every Friday night needing to go out and do cocaine. And it turns out that like when you're really busy, you don't have to think about this stuff. When you're wearing a mask and you're performing, you don't have to think about this stuff. You know, the problem goes away. It feels like it goes away. You don't have to be thinking about it. I couldn't be with my thoughts. I couldn't be with myself. Like it was so uncomfortable for me to be home alone that I would spend hours on Grindr, sometimes 6 hours, 7 hours on Grindr, just looking for hookups, you know, looking for conversation. I had money, I had the title, I had success, and yet I felt so alone. And I didn't have mechanisms by which to be with those feelings, so I numbed them. Sex was huge. It was so important to me to constantly be validated that I was sexy and beautiful and attractive and worthy. It was a slippery slope because it was never enough. And it just became destructive. I remember there were some coworkers all having Adderall. And so I thought, okay, everybody's hyper optimizing in Silicon Valley using medicine. So I need to go get something. So I got Adderall. I felt like Superman. I was diagnosed with ADHD, but I thought immediately, okay, I need to use this. And then using it moved into abusing it. There became diminishing returns. It was no longer serving me, no longer helping me, actually hurting me more than anything. That led to other drugs, everything under the sun, you name it. I was doing all of it. It gave me a sense of relief. I didn't have to feel all the intensity of all the emotions at work and going from these really intense highs in a corporate job to these really low, lonely moments at home. Episode 3 and 4 at Tumblr and at Airbnb is really where things hit the fan because I had kept a secret about these firings and all the pain had metastasized. I hadn't processed or reflected. So I was sitting with all this baggage and trying to hide it. And it was so obvious that I was in pain and that I was struggling. And I couldn't see it. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't be honest with it, with myself. Episode 4 details the rock bottom. This was the crescendo, and I get into detail in the docu-series. You should listen to it. But an abbreviated version was, here we are in 2018. I'm working at Airbnb, and out of nowhere, I get let go. This is the 4th time. It's a Monday morning at 9 a.m. I'm sitting across from HR, and they hand me the manila envelope and ask me to leave. It's no longer working out. You need to go. And I left that building, went on Grindr, found a party, and I almost lost my life in that moment, taking drugs that I didn't even know what the fuck it was, really, trusting somebody. Literally on that morning, everything went white. I passed out, hives, everything, you name it. It was crazy. I thought I was done. I have to tell you, when I had that happen, I was so scared. Any of you who have ever had a sort of near-death experience or partial overdose or overdose or anything like that, like it shakes you to your fucking core. It shakes you to your core. I can feel that just saying it. It wakes you the fuck up. Let me tell you something. There was this presence that said, not today. This ends today. And it came with this energy of like, you have big plans for your life, bitch. We are no longer playing this game. This is it. You are done. I went home. I sat in the shower under hot water and I just cried. And I did lots of breath work, breathing. And it was the first time where I really was just with myself, where I just needed to get really still and pay attention. I just saw the other day on LinkedIn, a friend of mine in tech, Andrew Serta, took his life January 1st this year. I've seen many of these posts over the last 18 months. And we put RIP and sending our love and our condolences, but we don't inspect what the fuck is really going on. Let's talk about what's real. Why are people going to these extents to do this to themselves? Why is it the case that when you walk into a morgue and there are, 4 bodies, 3 of them are men? Why is it that men are taking their lives and men are struggling and men are going down dark paths and men are being taken over by their anger and their fear? Women do it too. I'm not saying that, but there is this culture that we're supposed to tough it out and not actually look at what's going on. We have to change that. This is the message, and I will be communicating this until the day I die, because I think of Andrew and I think of the many others who are struggling in silence, who are putting on images, wearing armor, masking to make everything look like everything is great, when just beneath the surface, it is not. And to that, I ask you, what is that costing you? And how much longer are you willing to sit in that? Everything is fine. I hate that word when people say that now. Fine. Everything is fine. Oh, really? Everything is fine? I don't know that everything is fine. I almost became one of those statistics. I almost became that guy where everyone would have posted on Facebook, rest in peace. You know, he was such a nice person. I would have never known. Da, 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 da. Well, guess what? Now you do know. See yourself in this. Recognize that your pain, if it is not processed, it becomes projected onto all parts of your life, including your own, yourself, you. And sometimes that pain gets so heavy that we want to find relief in the fastest, most euphoric way possible. And that leads us to things that are not actually serving us. And we don't like talking about it. But we need to talk about it, because too many of us are taking our lives. Too many of us are silently struggling. We've lost ourselves. We've gone adrift, untethered. And the common denominator in the experience that I have seen over thousands of leaders is that everybody's trying to come home. They're trying to come home to you, who you really are, what you really desire. And what I have learned from the lowest moment of my life is that the moment everything felt like it was stripped away from me, I had to surrender. I had to let go to something bigger than myself and just be with it. Not do, be with it. Be with my heart. I am now in a relationship with that higher power, with that larger source of wisdom, with the part of me that deeply knows. And I submit to you that we all have this. We all have a dream. We all have that thing that we yearn for, that we aspire to, that lights us up inside. And our real job is to go after it, not to numb it or to overwhelm it with pain or to kill it, but to cultivate it. For everybody who is struggling, you are not alone. I don't care what big company, what CEO title, how much money you got, this, that, and the other. The struggle is still real. So thank you. Thank you for listening to that. Whew, okay. Next question. What's the thing you're still working on? What hasn't healed yet? I think for me, the biggest thing I'm working through right now is the inner critic, the voice in my head. You know, it used to manifest as the Hulk and be very aggressive. And once it took over, I couldn't get him down. It is less the Hulk now. It's more of a Gollum. You know, he's hanging around behind the rock and the motherfucker's still there, always talking shit, always has something to say. But I'm working on him. I'm working on him. And the way that I'm working on him is by inviting him into the space. I used to whip him and scold him and lock him up in a cell mentally, you know. But I realize he's just trying to keep me safe. It's a protection mechanism. He's just trying to tell me something. And I'm trying to love that and be in relationship with that. I would say that that's the inner critic is the biggest opportunity for me that I'm working through on my healing journey, is how to be in a loving relationship with that, how to turn him from a critic into a coach. And I think that's really the lesson for all of us, because I would wager that chances are you listening to this, you watching this, also have an inner critic. If you're a high performer, if you have high expectations for yourself and those around you, hello, you probably have an inner critic that's driving you many of the times. And yes, it leads you to a level of excellence that you can be proud of, and that is majestic and beautiful and powerful and magnificent. At the very same time, you have to take a breath and do it in proportion. Perfection is not healthy striving. You do all that you can, and then you let go and you surrender. I'm still working on that. Self-sabotage is another area of opportunity for me. I notice this even in small things, my finances, hesitating to get a good accountant, choosing to not take photos of a receipt. Whatever, I'll do it later. I'm like, really, bitch? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing things that could potentially give you problems later down the road? Do the right thing. I'm trying to pay attention to moments where I am sabotaging my opportunities, getting in my way, as opposed to staying in the flow of it all and letting life lead the way. That's something I work on. I used to self-sabotage in very big ways. I mean, look at all these firings. My self-sabotage is huge. And now I'm working to inspect it, notice it. Am I doing something that is in service of me and actually getting me where I want to go? Or is this sabotage behavior? And what do I have to do about that? So that's what I'm still working on. There's a question a fellow coach asked me the other day that I love. How were you complicit in creating the conditions you say that you didn't want? Now, this comes from Jerry Colonna. Jerry Colonna is one of the best executive coaches in the business. He's been around for a while, and this question has passed its way around the internet and is quite profound. How are you complicit in creating the conditions you say that you don't want? Well, I wasn't honest. I wasn't honest with myself. I wasn't accountable to myself. When things went wrong, I tried spinning it, putting it on other people. When I was frustrated with people, I would talk about them instead of talk to them. Or I would talk to them first, and then if they didn't listen, I would talk about them. I needed to be right versus learn how to get it right. Where can I learn here? What's the opportunity? Let me pause. Let me understand. Let me inspect. There was no time for that in my world because I was moving too fast. I didn't ask for help. I thought asking for help will signal weakness. That's how I was complicit. It's a beautiful question, and a question you might ask yourself about a challenge you're dealing with right now. These are some more of the practical questions. Okay, so if someone is sitting in a job right now that's killing them slowly, what's the first thing they should do? Not the fifth thing, but the first thing. Great question, because many of us are in this situation right now. I say the first thing you do is take a breath with me right now. Slow down and get clear on where you are right now. Situational awareness, I think, is the first step. You got to understand what's the org, what's the manager situation, what's your financial situation, what's your runway like, where are you in the scheme of things, and where do you want to move the chess piece? So I think understanding the table as it's laid out, the landscape, would really help you get a sense for what's working and what's not working. Here's where I am today. Here's where I want to be. And how do I close the delta? How do I close the gap? Start to get a picture of what this looks like. That way you can sit with it, you can be with it, you can inspect it and look at the situation. And if you need a partner, shoot me a note. Let's talk it through. Sometimes you do need someone to look at the table, the chessboard with you and figure out how are you going to make your moves. But I think that that's the first step. I often tell people, you got to really understand where you are right now. Next question. How do you know the difference between I should just push through this and I need to eject, I need to get out? How do you know? How does someone who is listening to this know, okay, I just need to be in this discomfort and this is sustainable versus no, I need to get out? And I would say the truth is you'll feel that somatically. What is your body telling you? What is your mind telling you? What is your heart telling you? You got to check in with yourself because an ambient level of discomfort is a positive thing, is a good thing. We have a guest on the show, my friend Nate Fender from Amazon talks about this. An ambient level of discomfort is a good thing. It allows you to grow and to push yourself. But when it becomes toxic, when it gets to the point where it starts to consume your nervous system and you are shut down and you are unable to replenish and you have lower levels of productivity and you feel like you are drowning, that's a very different conversation. My hope is that if you're listening to this and that is your situation, you shoot me a note after this and we have a conversation, because that is exactly the moment where you get to tap someone in to support you in your journey through that. You don't have to do that alone. Next question I get is, what do you say to the person that knows they need help but is terrified of looking weak? I would say to you, how true is that? Are you willing to consider the possibility that it makes you look, in fact, strong for being able to say, I don't know, but let's find out? For being able to say, I'm not sure. I need some support here. I need help. I don't understand this. Now, there's a way to do it responsibly, and then there's a way to do it that is offloading responsibility, where you're trying to deflect. Nothing is in your remit. You're trying to offload responsibility to people. That is a different conversation. We're not talking about that. We're talking about you doing the best that you can, putting your best foot forward, and yet still, even still, there are areas where you need support and you know that asking will unblock you, but you're worried it's going to make you feel weak. I will tell you that the opposite is quite true. And your capacity to hold that feeling and that state as a leader from a grounded, considered, intentional place actually is the marker of real genius, real power. And I think people feel that. We have to be honest about when we're not sure. I don't know. Let's find out. Let's work through this. We don't need to have all the answers figured out all the time. What I have learned working with the top CEOs, watching Brian Chesky, watching Sundar Pichai, watching Steve Jobs, I have seen that they all have coaches. They surround themselves with guides, with advisors, with trusted confidants, where they can workshop and practice and think through, where they can admit vulnerabilities and share what's not working. We need to actually have spaces to play, sandboxes, playgrounds, to practice leadership. All of the best have places where they can practice leadership. So I would say that if you're terrified, the first step is to recognize that, take a breath, honor that part of you, and then share that part of you with somebody, with a trusted person who has earned the right. Send me a note if that's you and that's how you feel. Let's talk about it. Okay, so another question I get a lot is, what would you say to a 25-year-old version of yourself starting their first big tech job right now? There's 5 pieces to think about. The first is vision. The second is strategy. The third is mindset. The fourth is skill set. And the fifth is energy management. Can you think about your life in terms of these 5 components? I'll run through them very quickly. The first is vision. You got to have a vision for your life. You got to see, where are you going? Where do you see the puck going to? And can you skate there? Especially now, this is critical. The next 5 years, a lot is going to change. The next 10 years, 15 years, a lot is going to change. What is the vision you have for your life? When you can see a vision, we all have it. It's here. It's in here. We have to tease it out. Once you're able to see the vision, the next piece becomes strategy. How are you going to approach walking and moving towards that vision? What is the structure and the approach and the insights that ground you moving towards the vision? And in there are the tactics, okay? You got the vision, you got the strategy, and then there's a mindset. What do you need to do to prepare yourself to be mentally ready to move towards the strategy, towards the vision. Okay. Mindset. How is your mind working? How do we make sure that your mindset and your heart set are strong? The next is skill set. What are those skills that we need to develop in you? Maybe it's cleaner communication. Maybe it's some kind of technical know-how. What are the skill sets? And the fifth is energy management. What are those things that fill your cup and give you energy and recharge you? And what are those things that drain you? And how do we do less of those? I would tell my 25-year-old self to start to think about your life across these 5 buckets and pay attention to them. And in order to do that, you have to slow down. You have to be willing to slow down enough to look at that, to inspect it, to create a regular practice where you can sit with yourself in meditation, in writing, and actually articulate that out for you. Because for every PRD that you write, for every tech spec that you review, for every document that you create for the company, I would ask, how are you applying that same level of intelligence and thoughtfulness and consideration to your own life? What's the brief? What's the strategy of your life? What are the requirements documents of your life? What do you require of yourself in order to sustain this life? This is a fair question. A lot of us don't ask that. So that's what I would say to my 25-year-old self. Another question I get is, what does it feel like 1 year later? And what did you learn about yourself? And I have to tell you, it feels like a liberation. It feels like a reclamation, really. Like I have reclaimed parts of myself. I have found myself again. I was so weighed down by these stories that I am a failure, that I'm a fuck up, that I'm wrong, that somehow I got in, but it was all fake and I wasn't really good. And it only was through this exercise of wrapping words and language around what actually happened to me that I was able to own the story and then interview people like my manager, Don Steele from Tumblr, who fired me, to talk with him and recognize that, you know what, people were intimidated by me. They were intimidated by my confidence.
Your resume intimidated a lot of people there because you had worked at Apple, because you had worked at Google. Then you look at some of the people who had been in like the art department thinking, well, now the pirate ship is being taken over by, Carnival Cruises. You're confident in who you are and you wanted to demonstrate confidence and competence and that you were being brought on to do something that you were going to be good at.
It wasn't just me being a terrible person. There were politics at hand here. And that's okay. It happens. There are politics. This is the game that we're playing. Getting to hear from people I worked with about what it was like working with me really was a reclamation. It was freeing. It unshackled me to a lot of the shame that kept me small, that still is keeping me small. But little by little, here we are on the microphone doing this shit, making it happen. Little by little, we're here and we're not going anywhere. Like, this is it. The universe is guiding me to do this and we're doing this and I'm honoring this and I'm staying obedient to the cause of this whole thing to serve you and to serve this bigger, higher message. So a year later, I feel lighter. I feel proud. I feel confident. And I feel like the story no longer owns me, because I'm able to now write the ending. I'm able to now look at this. I have alchemized it into the most beautiful learning tool for every other person who will listen and who will hear and who will see themselves in this story, because it goes through everything. Childhood trauma, trying to get jobs, dealing with high performance jobs, numbing and addictions, almost losing my life, finding love, healing. No matter where you are on your journey, there is something in this story that will serve you. So the invitation here is to put your headphones in, take some breaths, be present with it, maybe even grab a pen and paper and just be with the story, listen to it. If it brings up something for you, jot it down and then shoot me a note. Let's talk about it. I want to know. If you right now are listening to this or watching this and you feel like there is something missing in your life, something just isn't in alignment and not right, The answer is there. It's already inside of you. The answer is there. Well, I would ask you, what is it that you are not willing to look at? What's the conversation you really need to have with yourself or with someone else? What's the hard thing you got to look at? How are we braving this? We got to look at the hard things getting in the way. And that's my commitment, because it's in that we grab the lesson, and then we have the nutrients and the fertilizer to boom, take us to the next level. That's what this whole thing is all about. You may have made a mistake, but you are not a mistake. You may feel small, but you are actually big and brave. And you're a human, which means you're led by the heart. That's how this works. What I'm trying to do is to get us all to recognize that we have to all figure out how we're braving big tech. And that begins with taking a long, hard look at the truth of yourself. What's working, what's not, what's serving, what's not. And you got to heal your pain. You got to be in relationship with that anger. You got to know who you are and what you're doing, especially the next 10 years. That is the opportunity for all of us. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this. And if it inspires you, share it with somebody in your network that needs to hear it. Share it with your team. Bring me in to talk about it with your team. Let's use this as a learning tool. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited that you're here and you're listening and we're doing this. Hello, I'm going on vacation, Puerto Vallarta. You will be hearing this on March 16th. I will be on vacation. My husband and I, our wedding anniversary is also March 16th, which is so cool. But I'll be around, and please listen to this story and shoot me a note. I'll get back to you when I return. Thank you so much for being here. Let's go. Love you all. That's it for today's episode. If listening to this brings up something for you, I'd love to hear about it. Shoot me a note at hello@letsgowithjulio.com. The Let's Go with Julio show is produced and edited by Ricky Gunn, and our theme song is You Are the One by Nick Deutsch. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend or two who could benefit. I see y'all. I love you. Let's go, leaders.